Hi everyone, it's Mrs. Klingman and I'm going to continue reading Charlotte's Web. I am going to hope that you notice this background. Today I am at a real farm and that is where part of our story takes place. I'm so excited to continue reading Charlotte's Web because it's one of my favorite books and I get to read it to you today at a barn. Chapter 3, Escape. The barn was very large. It was very old. It smelled of hay and it smelled of manure. It smelled of the perspiration of tired horses and the wonderful sweet breath of patient cows. It often had a sort of peaceful smell, as though nothing bad could ever happen again in the world. It smelled of grain and of harness dressing and of axle grease and of rubber boots and of new rope. And whenever the cat was given a fish head to eat, the barn would smell of fish. But mostly it smelled of hay, for there was always hay in the great loft up overhead, and there was always hay being pitched down to the cows and the horses and the sheep. The barn was pleasantly warm in the winter when the animals spent most of their time indoors, and it was pleasantly cool in the summer when the big door stood wide open to the breeze. The barn had stalls on the main floor for the work horses, tie-ups on the main floor for the cows, a sheepfold down below for the sheep, a pig pen down below for Wilbur, and it was full of all sorts of things you would find in barns. Ladders, grindstones, pitchforks, monkey wrenches, scythes, lawnmowers, snow shovels, axe handles, milk pails, water buckets, empty grain sacks, and rusty rat traps. It was the kind of barn that swallows like to build their nest in. It was the kind of barn that children like to play in. And the whole thing was owned by Fern's uncle, Mr. Homer L. Zuckerman. There's a picture of Wilbur. Wilbur's new home was in the lower part of the barn, directly underneath the cows. Mr. Zuckerman knew that a manure pile is a good place to keep young pigs. Pigs need warmth, and it was warm and comfortable down there in the barn cellar on the south side. Fern came almost every day to visit him. She found an old milking stool that had been discarded, and she placed the stool in the sheepfold next to Wilbur's pen. Here she sat quietly during the long afternoons, thinking and listening and watching Wilbur. Here's a picture of Fern. The sheep soon got to know her and trust her too. So did the geese who lived with the sheep. All the animals trusted her. She was so quiet and friendly. Mr. Zuckerman did not allow her to take Wilbur out, and he did not allow Wilbur to get into the pig pen, and he did not allow her to get into the pig pen. But he told Fern that she could sit on the stool and watch Wilbur as long as she wanted to. It made her very happy just to be near her pig. And it made Wilbur happy to know that she was sitting there right outside his pen. But he never had any fun. No walks, no rides, and no swims. One afternoon in June, when Wilbur was almost 2 months old, he wandered out of his small yard outside the barn. Fern had not arrived for her usual visit. Wilbur stood in the sun, feeling lonely and bored. There's never anything to do around here, he thought. He walked slowly to his food trough and sniffed to see if anything had been overlooked at lunch. He found a small strip of potato skin and he ate it. His back itched, so he leaned against the fence and he rubbed it against the boards. When he tired of this, he walked indoors. He climbed to the top of the manure pile and he sat down. He didn't feel like going to sleep. He didn't feel like digging. He was tired of standing still and tired of lying down. I'm less than 2 months old and I'm tired of living, he said, and he walked out to the yard again. When I'm out here, he said, there's no place to go but in. And when I'm indoors, there's no place to go but out in the yard. Ah, that's where you're wrong, my young friend, said a voice. Wilbur looked through the fence and saw the goose standing there. You don't have to stay in that dirty little yard, said the goose. who talked rather fast. "One of the boards is loose. Push on it, push, push, push on it, and come on out." "What?" said Wilbur. "Say it slower." At the risk of repeating myself," said the goose, "I suggest that you come on out. It's wonderful out here." Did you say a board was loose?" That I did," said the goose. Wilbur walked up to the fence and saw that the goose was right. One board was loose. He put his head down, he shut his eyes, and he pushed, and the board gave way. In a minute he had squeezed through the fence and was standing in the long grass outside of his yard. The goose chuckled. "How does it feel to be free?" she asked. "I like it," said Wilbur. "That is, I guess I like it." Actually, Wilbur felt quite funny on the outside of his fence, and with nothing between him and the big world. "Well, where do you think I'd better go?" Anywhere you like," said the goose. "Go down through the orchard, root up the sod, go down through the garden and dig up the radishes. Root up everything, eat the grass, look for corn, look for oats, run all over, skip and dance, jump and prance. Go down through the orchard and stroll in the woods. The world is a wonderful place when you are young." "I can see that," replied Wilbur. He gave a jump in the air. He twirled, ran a few steps, he stopped, and he looked all around. He sniffed the smells of the afternoon, and then he set off walking down through the orchard. Pausing in the shade of an apple tree, he put his strong snout into the ground and he began pushing and digging and rooting. He felt very happy. He had plowed up quite a piece of ground before anyone had even noticed him. Mrs. Zuckerman was the first to see him. She saw him from the kitchen window and she immediately shouted for the men. "Homer!" she cried. "The pig's out! Lurvy, the pig's out! Homer, Lurvy, the pig's out! He's down there under the apple tree!" And now the trouble starts, thought Wilbur. Now I'll catch it. The goose heard the racket and she too started hollering, "Run, run, run! Downhill! Make it for the woods, the woods, the woods!" she shouted to Wilbur. "They'll never, 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 never catch you in the woods." And the Cocker Spaniel heard the commotion and he ran out from the barn to join in the chase. Mr. Zuckerman heard and he came out of the machine shed where he was mending a tool. Lurvy, the hired man, heard the noise and he came up from the asparagus patch where he was pulling weeds. Everyone walked toward Wilbur.